Give me one sec, guys. We are here. I'm just trying to remember. There we go. Should be live. Gonna attack a few people. Just so people know we are live. Because we are live. Oh, that shouldn't have happened. Yeah, no, it's frequent frame rate. Oh, bollocks. Right. Oh, give me a second because we're using the laptop again. But yeah, give me a second while I tag a few people. Give me a second, guys, because people are on the page and it's. Just bear with me 1 second, guys. There we go, just tag just a few people. So I do apologise. So yes, good morning, good afternoon, or even good morning, good afternoon, or even good evening. Welcome in. If I've just tagged you guys, I do apologise. Hopefully the sound is okay. The frame rate is still a bit shocking, but don't worry about it. Good evening, Darryl. How you doing, mate? But yes, welcome in to the 2025 summer break driver ratings. We do this every year to rate those who are competing on the British Touring Car Grid, to not only give the drivers a bit of credit for racing in the BTCC this season, but also to see where they line up, no doubt, on our ratings. So just remember, our ratings are our own. Sounds good. I'm glad to hear that. But as I say, the frame rate isn't as great. I'm not too bad, mate. I'm not too bad. Looking forward to. So just give me 1 second while I just get my phone charger back into my phone. But yeah, I'm doing pretty good. Sweating, but other than that, I'm doing very well. Evening, Joycey. How you doing? But yeah, we'll get into the grid very shortly. But if you're new around here, some of you guys may know who I am. But if you are new around here, I am Hoppers. I'm the voice and, of course, the face of Hoppers Motorsport Vlogs. I've been doing this for 6 years. It's been the best thing I've ever done, to be fair. Don't forget to like, comment, and hit the reactions for me this evening, guys. But if you got any driver ratings you want to put yourself, or give me opinion or ask opinion of certain drivers, then do stick it in the comments, because we are here for until 10:30. So we're going to get through. Hopefully, get through all the class of the who am I? Some imposter that looks like me. How you doing, Mark? Hope you're doing well, mate. But yeah, we're going to get through the class of 2025. bear in mind we won't be rating Ryan Bensley or Finn Leslie because they only took part in one race meeting this season. Unless they do somehow magically come back in the second half of the season, then we'll rate them at the end of the year. Hopefully, my ratings aren't as too harsh on people as they technically have been for the last couple of years. But we'll get into the 2025 grid very shortly. But it's nice to be back live. I was going to do this Monday, but however, it was extremely hot in Vlog HQ on Monday, so I didn't go live on Monday. Purely just because it is what it is. But anyway, let's get into tonight's live video. I am of course rocking the MG t-shirt for some bizarre reason, and of course the Ken Block Hoonigan Monster Energy cap just for this evening. But yeah, we'll get into tonight's rating. If you got any driver in particular you want me to rate, just sit tight because it is as I say, we'll try and get through the whole class of 2025. Obviously, notable driver missing is of course Michael Crees on the. Yeah, I'm gonna be going on to Jake because we're doing it in driver race number, not championship order. But yeah, we'll start off then. Of course, Jake Hill, reigning champion, and in the number one Laser Tools BMW 330. I'm gonna be honest. To see what's happened over last year, being of course reigning champion for the likes of Jake, etc. I personally I'm a bit, and I'm going to be honest. I know Simon Hill follows the page, so I've got to be really, very careful with what I say about Jake because I don't want to be too disheartening. But for someone who's a reigning champion so far, has has had a lot of a bit of a, I'm not going to say sorry time. He's had a bit of times where things haven't gone his way this season so far. He's only won one race this season, and that was of course at Brands Hatch, in round number 4 of the championship. Evening Diffon, how you doing, mate? But yeah, as I say, he's ultimately only won the one race. He's exactly, Mark. This is exactly what I'm going to say in this segment of Jake Hill. I often wonder, with winning one race already this season, there's been a couple of mistakes. Look at Alton Park in race 3, potential chance of a podium gone just like that because he made a mistake on the penultimate lap in race 3. There's been a few issues. Take Snetterton, for example, he qualified 20th. It's, that set the tone for the weekend, and, ultimately, was he praying for rain all weekend, to get the best out of that BMW? The BMW obviously seems to be not the best car at the moment on the grid for some bizarre reason, but like Mark said, it makes you wonder why he came champion last year. Yes, he came champion because he won quite a few races last season. Well, maybe 6, maybe 7 races last year. But ultimately, there seems to be at the moment a lot to take in with. Yeah, he took taking Ash out trying to pass him and stuff like that, and at Thruxton, which ultimately he took out Adam Morgan at Thruxton. Is there more to the pudding this year, or more to the fact Jake needs to realise second half of the season the car might not be its best at the moment, but it seriously needs to be where it needs to be at the moment. That car needs to improve massively going into the second half of the year. No doubt. But what can you do? You can't really just go, oh well, such and such, has become champion last year. Yeah, and that's another thing. Diffon's got the point there. He said he has to drive a bit more aggressively this year because the straight line speed isn't there. But driving aggressively because the speed isn't there is making stupid mistakes. It's making stupid mistakes to ultimately push on. And there's no disrespect, but I don't see him at the moment being high rated in my summer break ratings. I hate to be honest. I think he's about a 3, maybe a 2 out of 10 at the moment, just purely for that reason. And yes, these ratings aren't going to be pleasant to some people, and they're definitely not going to be any slouching regardless with it anyway. So up next then is of course his teammate at WSR, new driver to WSR, one of 3 new drivers to the WSR stable this year, and that is of course Daryl DeLeon. Well, where do I start with Daryl DeLeon? At the moment, I think personally getting a breakthrough win at Brands Hatch in race number 2 is definitely, yeah, and that's going back to Jake. He's 90 points adrift of the championship lead at the moment. Is he going to do it in the second half of the season? Is he going to turn the corner and say, he wants to fight, or is that BMW still going to struggle like heck? I can't really justify it at the moment. I can't really pin my finger on it, to be quite honest. But as I say, who knows? But anyway, going on to Daryl DeLeon, then obviously, started off this season um, after a full season at Unlimited Motorsport last year to then link up at WSR. I'm not going to lie, I was quite surprised. Yeah, this is you know well, this is another thing. I'm going to talk about certain points in this matter. You know, to see Darrell getting into WSR this season was a huge shock. To see, and it's no disrespect to him. He's a great racer. He knows what he's doing. But there's been certain things. Take Alton Park for example, where there's been a few cars he hit, and like I say, we'll go back to Jake briefly towards before I get to Tom Chilton, but I don't think Jake's going to win the championship this year, to be brutally honest. But like I say, we'll talk about it in the second half of the year. But Darrell to do, you know, get into WSR obviously it's a huge step for him, you know. But seeing him get a race win at Brands in the second race, all because the likes of Dan Camish, for example, shut the engine down, and Jake had no way of intent to, you know, not give up that place so easy. But for me, it was a shock surprise to see Darrell going team up with a WSR with Aidan Moffat, Charles Rainford, and of course Jake Hill. Bar Jake Hill, a complete refresh of teams. Yeah, well, drivers. You've got no longer Colin Turkington. Adam Morgan has left to go to Accelerate. So there is. He's come a long way since the end of last season, but there is a bit of contact. There was a bit of contact where he took out. I can't remember who he took out, but he took out his own teammate as well in a bit of a collision with another car, which wouldn't have gone down well with Dick Bennett and the guys at WSR. So, he's doing okay, but he needs to push on. I'm going to give him about a 3.5 because, okay, given his a race win at Brands, but since then it's been a bit touch and go for him. But then again, that is what it is, isn't it? With Darrell's BTCC debut, or should I say BTC debut with a brand new team and a brand new car. The car looks a bit basic with less sponsors on it. I'm a bit concerned about that, but as I say, a 3.5 at the moment may give him, will give him his due for that. But anyway, going, I think personally it's going to be touch and go for him. I don't think he will. I think we may see a couple of 50-50 moments in the second half of the season. You never know. He might pick up the pace and realise, some parts have worked, some things haven't worked. But who knows? With the likes of, that's it. He hit, he hit Taylor Smith, and then it hit Charles Rainford. Yeah, I think it was either Charles Rainford or Aidan Moffat. It was one of the two. I can't remember exactly which BMW it was. Which then hit. He seemed to be hitting Taylor Smith a bit more at Alton Park because Taylor Smith got done for exactly the same thing. So, it is what it is. But we'll crack on. Anyway, so up next then is Tom Chilton, Tommy Chill. What do we think about Tom Chilton this year for Accelerate? You know, well, that's another thing. BMW have downgraded their manufacturer support. Probably explains why Colin Turkington isn't racing, but I could be wrong in that. But to see factory support from BMW at the moment not been the greatest. It's a bit of a shame, really. It's been a bit of a, excuse the language, but being a bit of a shitter with it because what's to come for next year. Especially if they want to be around and fighting for the championship for next season. I don't think argumentably we'll see a BMW win the title this year. I don't want to upset the WSR fan brigade, but it is what it is at the moment. But anyway, moving on to Tom Chilton. Yes, getting a win at yeah, exactly that, Mark. Just a little mistake at Alton Park, which had been, yeah, De Leon hit Ronan Pearson, then caused him to hit Charles Rainford. Yeah, so there's been a bit of contact between a few cars on the grid already, between some teammates taking other cars out, but then ultimately takes the other car out of the stable. So it is what it is. But yeah, Tom Chilton then, in his now, I think it's his fourth season at Accelerate. I could be wrong. I'll have to double count that. 22, 23, 24, 25. Yeah, so it's 4 seasons at Accelerate. Team Virtue. Personally, I'm going to be honest. I was a bit wary of Tom Chilton coming back for the BTCC this season. I think he's a great guy. I think he's a great racer. He's one of the oldest drivers on the grid now. Bear in mind, he made his debut in 2002 at the tender age of 17. He got his first win of the season at Donington in a reverse grid. He seems to do quite well at Donington on the national circuit. I think personally, apart from a silly mistake at Alton Park that ultimately, had a bit of issues there and then, I think given exactly what Mark says, an 8 out of 10 for Tom Chilton. I think personally, I would say 7.5 from my perspective, but he's done quite well. What's going to happen second half of the season? That Hyundai is quick. We know that, but people have probably said, yeah, he has. Yeah, it's a bit of a yo-yo effect, but he's had podium he's had a win and a couple of podiums. He's actually retired from a couple of races, but it's actually not gone as bad as potentially 2024 had. With the car going wrong and liability, but he's done okay. So like a 7.5 for him. What might happen in the second half of the season, who knows? But we've got a lot of things to look out for with Tom Chilton potentially. Some good circuits that he knows, like he's won at Croft previously, so you never know really. So it could be argumentably second half of the season, maybe what it is. But anyway, if you don't agree with these ratings, you can disagree. I'm not going to shout and scream at people. These are my own. Quite harsh giving De Leon 3.5 if Chilton's getting 7.5. Well, there seems to be. I'm going to be honest, Darryl. If I'm going to be honest, mate, if I could change my ratings, but maybe we'll change De Leon's to about, I'll say a 4. Then we'll put De Leon's up to a 4 then. But it is, but like I say, these ratings are my own, but then sometimes they are, as I say, they are harsh sometimes, but I'll change De Leon's to a 4 because if Tom Chilton's getting a 7.5, then that's what it is. The Hyundai's, but will the Hyundai's be quick after the summer rule change? That is the question under floor on Hyundai. I'm going to be honest, mate. I don't really know, and I read the article, and I can't really discuss what I think about it until we know. It's as simple as that. Yeah, exactly. This is the thing. There's a lot of things about the underflooring or the flat floors. I'm going to be honest. I don't really want to discuss it at the moment until we know exactly what's happening with that, etc. So just bear in mind. I don't if I if we don't discuss it for now, but I'm sure we'll see what happens at Croft, because it seems to be a lot of as I get a moth near the laptop. But yeah, but we'll change Darrell de Leon's from a 3.5 to a 4 then. But we'll see what happens at Croft. Anyway, up next is number 12, Stephen Jelly. Yes, Stephen Jelly returns to the championship with One Motorsport. No worries, Ed. I'll catch up with you. Is he getting married tomorrow? Is Chris Nash getting married tomorrow? Where's my bloody invite? No worries, mate. No worries. I'll catch up with you soon, mate. But thank you for stopping by. Means a lot. But um, but yeah. As I say, um, as I go slightly off topic, but you know, um, but yeah. Um, but yeah, Stephen Jelly. Then you know, for me, this is where I personally, I'm going to be honest, One Motorsport with the Honda coming back after a sabbatical last year. The car doesn't. I'm going to be honest. The car doesn't seem. They say they've done a lot of work on it. I've yet to see the raw pace of it. We'll go on about Josh Cook further down very soon. But for me, Stephen Jelly coming back into the BTCC after racing Porsche Carreras, and yes, he's everyone knows he's better in a BMW. I'm going to be honest. Stephen is going to be rated is 1 out of 10. I feel really gutted that he's come back to the BTCC, and it's not been easy. He's had a torrid season with the car. Just seems to be either not right for him, or the car just seems to have a lot of issues. Like Diffon's just said, he's thereabouts with a lot of things, and as I say, um, the car just seemed to have a lot of trouble at Oulton Park, and it's not seemed to be gelling with him. I think Stephen needs to realise, this season to come back in the BTCC is probably a baptism of fire. But then again, it is what it is, isn't it? But like I say, I'll give him a 1 out of 10 purely because of the liability and a few issues. He's not had a great season so far. What's going to happen second half of the season, we don't know. But anyway, if that's harsh, it's harsh. But it is what it is. Obviously, up next is number 14, which is Ronan Pearson. Yes, we'll talk about Ronan, but I'm a bit concerned to why all of a sudden has as he left Speedworks prior to. Yeah, exactly different. I think Stephen is a driver that he can't catch a break. There's a couple of drivers in this season that I think are exactly in the same boat, but we'll go further down the list when we get to them. But like I say, it is what it is. But Ronan Pearson and number 14, obviously, pulled out of Oulton Park due to commercial reasons and probably cited budget issues. I'm not gonna lie, it's a bit of deja vu, should we say? He obviously raced at his home event. It is now twice, yeah, because he didn't finish last season. Accelerate, he pulled out after Knockhill, so he then didn't compete. Donington, Silverstone, and Brands season, at the end of last season. And it is, to see why he is going so far into his touring car career. Yes, getting a race win last year should have really opened the world for him in BTCC. However, signed for Speedworks at the start of the year. It's been a bit of probably a tough campaign because that Corolla hasn't been really where it wants to be at the moment. but I can't really, I can't really see exactly why Ronan has all of a sudden lost commercial and lost budget issues. It's a big shame because he was looking forward to trying to make amends for not finishing the season last year, but unfortunately, I can't give him a rating. I know people might say Hopper's give him a rating, but I can't because it's very difficult citing all the difficulties at the moment, etc. So, what is there to be with Ronan? I think, you know, yes, he's a likable guy, but is the BTCC a tough ass game to say at least this is where he wants to be, and I think given the sort of not finishing a season twice in 2 seasons now, one at Accelerate and then at Speedworks, surely that's setting alarm bells to think, well, what's going on? But then again, like I say, I can't rate him at the moment, but you never know if he manages to get a deal for the second half of the season and then does come back, then ultimately we can rate him. So then up next is number 16 is Aidan Moffat um, at the LKQ Euro Car Pots. BMW did. To be fair, Diffon, he was the better driver out of the likes of Gordon Shedden, Aaron Taylor Smith, and James Dorlin. I'm not gonna lie about that, but like I say, with you know the budget issues and commercial issues, it's a bit worrying to think why's that happened, but who knows. But anyway, let's move on to Aidan Moffat then, the first of the LKQ Euro car parts uh, WSR BMWs. For me personally, for Aidan to go back to rear wheel drive after having 2 seasons in front wheel drive is a bit of a surprise. It was also a bit of a surprise to see him enter at WSR for this year. Obviously, it seems there's a lot to take in with maybe the baptism of fire um, to go back to wheel drive. Yes, he's done well when he was with the Laser Tools Infinity, but to see him in the BMW at the moment, he is not. I don't think he's really enjoying it at the moment. I think personally, I've got to rate Aidan. Maybe I'll give him. I don't really know what to give him, but if I give him a low score, then it is what it is. But just remember, these are my ratings, and it is what it is. But as I say, I'm trying to get, I've got to get through this because we we can't spend most of the time to try and say, yeah, this is this. But personally, I'll probably say I'll give him a 2, just because he seems to be struggling in that BMW at the moment. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but let me know in the comments, guys. But as I say, it just seems the BMW needs to be tweaked with him. I don't know whether he's struggling being back in rear wheel drive, or he's just been within within um within his rights. I think obviously given Aidan has to you know push on with the BMW in the second half of the season. As I say, I'll give him a 2, but he's not been on the podium. He's not been where he wants to be. And yeah, like Mark said, he's struggling in qualifying. It seems that the quick six qualifying for that BMW of Aidan Moffat, he's not got anywhere where he wants to be. He seems to be having a really torrid time in BTCC. Look what happened when he was at Speedworks with the Corolla last year. There's only one race win, you know, and it just seemed to be, a few what. Yeah, and Tracy's probably just said, watch out the second half of the season. Well, let's see what happens the second half of the season. I don't want to be beating around the bush and say, what, Aidan Moffat struggles with a BMW, but let's see what happens in the second half of the year. If he does better in the second half of the year and things get bigger and better, then will change his rating at the end of the year anyway, because we'll be doing driver end of season driver ratings anyway. Diffon, he's had an okay two. He's two had an okay season. I think he would have thought that the BMW would be exactly as the Infinity, but there has been so much change since then, and I think he struggled more with real drive than he thought he would. Yeah, totally agree, mate. You know, I'm not gonna lie, I'm not gonna bullshit about it. But anyway, I wouldn't panic too much about it because, like I say, these ratings are what they are. So up next is, of course, number 17, Dexter Patterson. Obviously, at the first of the Unlimited Motorsport Cupras. Where do we rate the Dexter this season so far? Obviously, coming back after racing a Lotus in British GT last season. I think personally, I'm going to be honest. Yeah, Aidan was better in the Infinity. He wasn't. He wasn't too shy away from it, was it? Especially with his illustrious teammate in champion Ash Sutton at the time. But anyway, I do apologise. I had to have a drink. But yeah, too much contact. Dexter Patterson too much contact with his teammate Max Hall. I'm going to be honest. We'll get when we get down to Max Hall. I'll tell you some stuff how I feel about it. But personally, Dexter is really struggling this season coming back into the BTCC. He got the fastest lap at Alton Park in race 3. Did I see that he got thrown out because he failed ride height? Did I see it? Because I think he got thrown out of race 3 results, didn't he, for ride height, if I remember rightly. I'll just quickly go on to the race results because it will tell me um, on token btcc.net. Yes, he got thrown out because he failed ride height in race 3 at Alton Park, was a big shame. What was I drinking, Daryl? I was drinking Coke, mate. I'm not on the beer tonight, mate. I'm not on the beer this evening. Yeah, he failed ride height. Tracy did say, just go to Tracy's comment. Dexter is a good driver, but needs a better car. 100%. 100%, yeah. He got disqualified because he failed ride height, which was a big shame, really, because he got the fastest lap as well. But I was drinking Coke, Daryl. Not on the beer tonight, mate, because there isn't any in the house. But hey, never mind. Excuse me. Can't mute my mic quick enough. But yeah, I think we're gonna give Dexter around maybe a 2 for first half of the season. But who knows what will bring for the second half? You know, maybe a couple of things there, and then with the likes of Max Hall as well needs to settle down a bit. Up next then is of course Senna Proctor. Obviously, we all know the story behind Senna Proctor. He was meant to take over at Croft from Michael Crees. However, due to Michael Crees giving Ryan Bensley a one-off drive at Stetson, which unfortunately curtailed Michael Creas's um, half deal campaign of the BTCC. I'm not going to lie, I think, you know, Senna's done alright since stepping into. Yeah, the Cooper showed really great pace in testing, didn't it? It's top of the tree at the afternoon session over at Croft. No beer, am I okay? I'm doing alright, mate. I'm doing okay. I'm doing alright, mate. I would have gone and got some, but I'm not in the mood tonight, to be fair. Ooh, don't know what that was, but yeah, but that's the thing. The Cooper started off great in testing, um, but I, to be fair, it's a bit worrying to see why it did well in testing, and then all of a sudden, come the racing, it seemed to have just gone. See you later. But it is what it is. But anyway, as I was saying about Senna Proctor, coming in for the half season, or should have came earlier than expected. Obviously, he's been bang on the pace after being away from the BTCC since 2021, and I think given to see what Senna's gonna do, he's adapted back well in a car he knows from 2021 because he raced it. Um, did he race it in 2021? No, he didn't race it in 2021, did he? He raced it in 2020. So it's a car he knows very well. It's another car he knows very well. But given what Senna's done since the time he's got into the of course the Hyundai i30 accepting Virtue car, it's the same. It's basically the same car. Yeah, he's been pretty decent. I'm gonna give him probably 6 out of 10 just because he's only done a few rounds. But let's see what he does going into the second half of the season when he should have been coming back. Obviously, is one of his obviously the home circuit of Croft because he's a Yorkshireman. But who knows? Maybe like he's done pretty well since he's been out for a couple of years now. But to jump back in, it just shows exactly how well things are going with the likes of yeah, top 6 out of the top 10 finishes. Maybe if he'd been in the championship at the start, he could have been in the top 10. Yeah, he could. It could have easily been that different. You never know, mate. He could have easily been there or thereabouts. Anyway, up next is Chris Smiley for Restart Racing, one of the other Hyundai i30 fastbacks. I'm going to be honest. For Restart Racing, it's been a bit of a season where obviously the likes of, Chris Smiley also knows the car because he raced it in 2020, the COVID pandemic season. Obviously, teammate to Senna Proctor back in 2020. But personally, he's come on a bit more leaps and bounds now. Obviously, with having Matt Neal in the team at Restart, they seem to be doing quite well at the moment. And Chris did very well at Alton Park. And who was that? Who was that diff on? That shouldn't have said he shouldn't be back on the grid. But yeah, Chris Smiley, he's done very well. He did well at Alton Park, ultimately in qualifying. And then getting on the podium in race one. Okay, it's took until now, but I'm going to be honest. He's done okay. I can't really give him a solid rating, but I think we'll give him technically a 5.5, purely because the Hyundai's took a bit of getting back used to after the about Senna Proctor. Okay, well, people that say that have no place in the sport. They're just idiots. But Chris Smiley, then fair play to him. He'll do okay. Hopefully, second half. The car looks fast anyway. But it needs to be, in my opinion, 5.5 for Chris Smiley. It's not to take the mick, but I think personally he will get there. I wouldn't be surprised if we see him win a race. He's doing well in the Independence Championship at the moment. It seems it's a bit of a two-horse race at the moment in the Independence, but who knows? But there you go, Chris Smiley. Let me know what you think about him, guys. Let me know. Don't be too shy. But while I go on to the next driver in a moment or two. But I'm going to get a quick drink of water because I need to be hydrated. But yeah, I'll be back in one moment. we go. Can you all still hear me? Let me know. It's quite good how I've got the laptop and running. That's how it is. Going to lead through some comments. Restart did right by dumping the Cupra for the Hyundai. Yep. Restart have come a long way since last year and a regular top 10 finishes. I can see them winning the Independence Teams Championship. So can I, mate. So can I. Just let me know if you can hear me, guys. Got me water in a Sneak Energy bottle, but it's better than trying to have it in a glass. That's better. But yeah, so going to the next driver then, and that is, of course, good. I'm glad people can hear me. The next driver then is, of course, Dan Camish, number 27, the first of the 4 Napa Racing UK drivers. Where do I start with Dan Camish? I'm going to be honest. Dan Cam this year, so far, has probably been argumentably one of the best qualifiers. Yeah, I think that's the thing, Tracy. I think Ash was trying to no word of a lie. I think he was trying to you know, Diffan, that's cheeky. Do you want me to get the ban hammer out and what can I do? I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna do that. Not gonna do that. But yeah, you know, to let Ash was letting Chris Smiley through. Yeah, I think Ash was trying to say, you know what, I don't really want the hards for for race 3 later on, or not. Well, to get the hards in race 2, I know what he's like. But yeah, it is what it is. But you know, it's fair play to Ash to, you know, literally saying, "Oh, Chris Smiley can have the hards. I'm sick of running them." But no, but yeah, Dan Camish has had a really decent start to the season. He's done well in qualifying, couple of pole positions there and there. However, and obviously a race win. Was it a race win at Donington? Just let me just check the results because I am so dumb. Well, I'm not dumb. What am I on about? Stop working myself down, hoppers lad. Race 1, Donington. No, he won it. He got pole position. He got pole position at oh, I love the banter. I don't really care if people say unfortunately they can hear me. Well, guess what? Yeah. But yeah, but he got pole position at Donington and of course Snetterton, and then he won at Snetterton. So personally, I think given you know um, with what's happened, you know, he's had 2 pole positions and 1 race win so far this season as Dan Camish. But you know, he's done well. But apart from that stupid shuts in the engine down at Bronze Hatch, which he probably kicked himself for that, because potentially it could have been a nail biter race win at of course Bronze Hatch as well. So I'm going to give him probably, I'd say, a 5 out of 10 just for that. But you never know. Dan Cam goes well. You know, he needs to just push on. He's still, you know, he's 3rd in the championship. You know, fair play. He's not really been a disaster by any means, but you know, it is what it is. But I think given, yeah, this is the thing. You know, he's been the best qualifier, but his qualifying performance hasn't really materialised into race results as he wanted exactly. That's another thing, Diffon, but you know, it is what it is. And since Ruxton has been very vocal on social media and he didn't really want to talk to Louise at Alton Park, well, that's the thing, you know, the touring car drivers are drivers, and they are human beings. So, is what it is. Right, next driver on the list was slowly but surely getting down the list of the BTCC 2025 grid. If anyone's just joined, welcome in. Don't forget to hit the reactions, guys. Get them going. But yeah, hope everyone's enjoying this, by the way, because I am. But obviously, up next is, of course, number 28 is Nick Hamilton. Yes, Nick Hamilton. Obviously, last saw him in a BTCC car in 2023 after a decent first top six place at Donington Park in race number 2 at the opening round in 2023. Obviously, we didn't see him last season due to some unknown reason, which I'm not going to go into because I don't really want to dive into and I don't really want to discuss it, because that's not what we're here for. But Nick Hamilton slowly but surely getting used to being back in a British touring car, back in a Cupra that he knows. But unfortunately, it's been a bit of a weird one for Nick Hamilton. Obviously, those who mock Nick Hamilton don't follow the page and don't like the page, because you'll just get thrown out straight away if anyone puts any hate comments towards him. But personally, it's great to see him back on the grid. I think, to see him back on the grid, but he needs to really, really, somehow try and prove a point. Try and get where he needs to be. I do feel sorry for him because it's not been easy coming back into the BTCC. People were looking at what was going on with, last season he didn't come back for some reason, and then he's back this year. Personally, I think to see Nick back on the grid just deserves credit in itself. It doesn't deserve a rating. He doesn't deserve a massive, not a massive or low rating. He just needs the credit to be on the, to deserve the credit to be on the BTCC grid. If people say, Hoppers, you've been rating other drivers, why has Nick Hamilton not got a rating? Well, it's just an inspiration to many people out there to say, look, if you've got a disability, you can rate a BTCC car, don't let it bother you. And yes, Nick is a possibility. That I've got to somehow get hold of him to get him on here. It'd be really great if we did. But as I say, I can't really give him a low or high rating. I just want to give him credit for coming back on the BTCC grid, and to show an inspirational, very much of an inspirational guy. And yes, whether you hate that I've not given him a rating, then please bear in mind. I just want to give him. I see. This is the thing, Diffan. We'll go on about him before I get to the next driver. But the thing is, what people don't realise, and this is another thing, and I'll open up about this, but I can't understand why people go onto social media, they see Nick Hamilton gets announced, they then go, Nick Hamilton is back on the BTCC grid. Next minute, some idiot or idiots or criticism say, "Oh, he'll be at the back of the grid. Oh, he'll be in the gravel trap. It'll make the marshals work out really hard. And it's not really, it's not fair on the marshals, etc." I'm going to be blatantly honest, and excuse my foul mouth rant here, but anyone that does that in here, anyone that actually comes in here and actually starts slating Nick Hamilton or any other driver to say, they're a waste of space, or they don't deserve a touring car, or he's going to crash off, or he's going to go in the gravel, he's going to get involved in silly accidents and never take responsibility. Get the F out of here, because I've got no time for people like this. It really, really, and I'm going to be honest, it pisses me off that people think that oh, he's got a disability, he shouldn't be on the grid. Well, guess what? You try being him and get in that car and try and put it on pole position, or try and do what Nick does. I'm sorry, but I haven't got the time or patience for people that really want to mock someone with a disability. He has his own right to be on the grid regardless. So this is why if someone says Hoppers, he's not been rated, you know, why has he not had a number rated? Well, he doesn't need a number rated. He just gets credit for being on the grid. Exactly. See, exactly that, Mark. Exactly that. He's got a He's a likable character. He's got budget. He's got his budget. He's got a license to race on track. So let's give him his credit to be there. I just think people just don't understand, or people don't give a shit what they type. It's people hiding behind the keyboard. I bet they're the ones who don't go to a circuit week in, week out. The same people were saying exactly the same about Nick Halstead. Yes, Nick Halstead hasn't got a disability, but they were saying, oh, he's going to be at the back of the grid. Well, guess what? I ain't got time for people like that. If you want to think that in BTC, you know, get out of pages like that. It's just I hate people that are just so toxic and no, it's not. It's none of like, oh, Lewis has paid for his drive. It's none of that. Nick's worked hard to get his own budget, his own sponsors, to have his own right about it. But anyway, as I say, we're not going to give him a high or low rating. We're going to give him credit for being back on the BTCC grid, where he belongs. So that's all we're going to do for Nick Hamilton. Like it or lump it. If you don't like it, then why are you here? Sorry for a bit of a rant, peeps, but it is what it is. Anyway, let's move on to the next driver, didn't it? And that exactly, Nick Halstead is a big boost for the BTCC with media and crazy carts. Exactly. Why should it be? Why should it be that people want to take the piss out of everyone else because the results aren't matching? Well, guess what? They deserve to be on the grid. Try and jump in a touring car and put it on pole position then. If you think you've got the guts to do it, go and do it. But I bet you won't. Anyway, enough of my rant because it's going to get me het up, and I don't really want to be het up about it. So anyway, up next is of course number 32, and that is of course our pal Mr. Dan Rowbottom. Where do I start with Dan Rowbottom? Where do I start with Robo's season? They won't have to, see the thing. This is the thing, Giffen. They won't have the balls to do it. They won't have the bollocks to do it, mate. I bet they won't have the balls to say what they really think of him to his face. They'd rather hide behind the keyboard, cowards. And they say that he's only there because of who his brother is, and that his brother is the one who paid for his drive. And that's not the case. He works hard for his place on the grid. Good on him. Exactly, mate. Exactly that. But anyway, as I was saying, let's not try and get involved in a foul mouth rant because it really pisses me off sometimes. But anyway, number 32, Dan Rowbottom. Where do we start with Robo? Where do we start with Robo then? I'm going to be quite honest. Dan's racing this season, argumentably, has been probably a lot to take in, and just not because of being on the grid in 2025. There's a lot of things that not many people know about. For me personally, I know he's at the British Grand Prix, but you never know. Let's see. We'll mention his page. We'll mention his page on here. We'll mention his page anyway and see if see if anything happens. But yeah, he's been. To be fair, Dan's done exceptionally well this year. Yeah, he's had the best start since his debut in 2019. I'm going to be honest. He knows what he's doing with that car. But the thing is, he had a bit of a tough start to before the season. Dan Rowbottom get involved. There you go. It'd be nice to see if Dan does actually get involved because we are talking about our favourite driver. But like I say, he is at the British Grand Prix. Don't start tagging him, Daryl, like that. He'll probably like, what's going on here? but um, but as I say, um, he's had a really great season so far. To be honest, when he obviously a bit of a tough start to the season, obviously recovering from open heart surgery. But how was it? What has gone on this season? I'm absolutely uh, over the moon to see him getting a few podiums there and then. Two race wins in the season as well. That's more than he's had previously. He's only had one race win in a season. After a torrid 2024 as well. You know, but personally, I can see exactly what really happened for Robo. I think personally, getting a race win at Snetterton in race two when I was there in person, it's bringing a lot of emotion back, and I remember my nerves being really kicking in every lap and thinking, is he gonna win? Is he gonna win? I kept shouting, gap the cars, and I honestly thought Adam Morgan was gonna get him. To be fair, and I was really scared, but to see him win at Snetterton in person, I literally cried afterwards because it's the first time I've ever seen him win a race. But to see exactly you know how well he's done, to get a second race win at Thruxton in race three, he does well round there as well, and then that propelled him into third in the championship going to Otten Park. But then qualifying didn't go well at Alton, but you know he's still fourth in the championship going into the second half of the season. Yeah, that's another thing. This one, I'd be surprised. I'd love him to win the championship, but that's just me being biased, isn't it? But no, and in all seriousness, I think given his caliber of his racing, you never know if he has another couple more race wins and a couple more podiums. I think it will give him a really good morale boost after last season, and also we don't have to worry about whether he's coming back next year because he's signed another deal. So he's already back in the Napa stable for next year. So we don't need to worry come the end of the year where he's going to end up going. But to be fair, I'm going to give him a solid 9 out of 10. You know, I know people might say, Hoppers, I think you were going to give him a 10. I can't really give him. I could give him a 10, but then that's just being too biased and that's just being too nice. But no, I think a 9 out of 10 would do Robo because, there has been a few things, a few what ifs. But to be fair, he's, to see him fourth in the championship and going into the second half of the season is something of that was kind of an eye opener, regardless of what many people think. But he's proved a point. He's turned a corner this year. Yes, the car might not be as you know the car's been decent, but I don't it's not all been plain sailing sometimes. But he's done exceptionally well. Exactly. If he wins another race, say for example he wins another race somewhere, and he gets 3 race wins this season, or he gets another two, so he gets 4 race wins in the season, and that will put him onto the massive, a really huge, sort of a huge, milestone. It'll give him 6 overall race wins, and if he wins two more races this season, he would have been it would have been unreal. He won at Thruxton in race three. He won race two at Snetterton. It just seems that car seems to be gelling with him now, and I think with having Paul Ridgway, his engineer, it's obviously a perfect combination. Anyway, guys, we are going to carry on because we're running out of time. We are You're not that far away from the others. But yeah, fair play to Robo. I'm gonna, as I say, I'll give him a 9. But if he is watching, I'll give him a friendly wave. But I don't think he is. He's too busy at the British Grand Prix this weekend, and then next weekend he's working with MG at Goodwood, I believe. He'll probably see the MG T-shirt and probably think, "Ooh, Hoppers has got a nice T-shirt on tonight," and I haven't got his hoodie on today, so because it's too warm. But anyway, I think he's done quite well so far. Well, I think you can all agree on that. But then again, that's me being biased as well. Up next is his former teammate, obviously jumped campaign for 2025, and that is of course Adam Morgan. What do we think about Adam Morgan, people? What do we think about him? He's had 2 second place finishes. He's not, exactly, you know, Paul Ridgway and Robo have had the green light to go their own way about things, and their setup seems to be quite nice at the moment. It's it's a nice balance when you get your engineer and yourself have the to go their own way. But let's see what happens second half of the season. I can't just say Dan's going to do rubbish in the second half of the year because I don't think he will. I think he'll do all right, I suppose. But yeah, Adam Morgan then jumped ship from of course WSR where he's been for the last 2 seasons um, to Team Virtue or or Accelerate. What do we think about Adam Morgan? Personally, I think Adam has adapted quite well to go back to front wheel drive. However, some things have been okay. He's had 2 second place finishes, but is he getting there with the going back to front wheel drive? You know, it's not like okay. Yeah, he seems to be more happy of being back in a front wheel drive car. Yes, he had an incident with Jake at Fruxton. Yes, he then crashed out at Allard in race 3 at Fruxton. But he seems to be a lot more better. I think I totally agree with that, Diff. I'm not gonna lie. I don't know how I'm gonna rate him, but I think what do we rate him? What do we rate him, guys? Let me know. But I think given his due, I think Adam has really got the potential for hopefully a race win. But I can't see you know him not enjoying being back in a front wheel drive car. I think that's what he's been destined for so many times where things have been disaster. Yeah, exactly. He should have never gone to the rear wheel drive BMW when Sicily ran it, and then obviously going into WSR. WSR his first season was a bit rocky in the BMW, wasn't it? And then last season just seemed to be not thereabouts. But hey, we all make mistakes. But to see him in, I think that's a reasonable. I think 8 out of 10, like you say, Mark. I think that's um, a reasonable rating. To be fair, so we'll leave it as that. If I'm going through quick, guys, it's because we're trying to get through the grid and we're trying to get through so I can give you a rundown what's to come tomorrow and what's to come in the next week. But yeah, because I don't want to do this into a two-part, you see. But then anyway, um, so we have next is the second of the Speedworks Corollas, and that is number 40, and that is Aaron Taylor Smith. I don't know what to think of Aaron this season. Being reigning, yeah, couple of mistakes has cost it. A couple of mistakes by him has cost him a couple of good results this year so far. But his qualifying performance is a lot more better. And yes, going back to what Adam Morgan, yes, I agree, Defan. But yeah, Aaron Taylor Smith this year, I don't know what to think. I don't want to be disrespectful to Aaron because I think he's one of them racers that has won races in the past. The reigning independent champion, though, is seen to be struggling at Speedworks. Is it a massive regret? Or is it because the car isn't great? I don't know where I can go with Aaron because I really have noticed that he seems to be lacking. I'm going to be honest, seems to be lacking a bit of confidence in that Corolla. Like I say, I don't know whether it's the Corolla itself or whether it's just Aaron being in a works back car at the moment. Yeah, it's been a very poor. Yeah, to be fair, Mark, it has been a very poor season so far for Aaron. I don't think he's enjoying time at Speedworks. I think, like you say, he's probably thinking, that the Corolla isn't up there, even though Gordon Shedden got a race win at Alton Park last time out. I think he's kind of thinking, why did I leave Power Max? Why did I leave? Why did could have stayed there? But is he regretting? Is he regretting it? I don't know. But I'm going to say it's a solid 2 out of 10, unfortunately. But is what it is, unfortunately. Yeah, that's another thing, Tracy. I think he's lost the spark a bit. Is it being a bit more than he can chew with things? I don't know. It's hard to explain a few things, but like I say, we'll give him a 2 out of 10. But if it's harsh, it's harsh, isn't it? Up next is number 50, and that is Nick Halstead. Yeah, the speed in the engine is causing is a massive issue. It's really, um, really weird, but you never know. Hopefully, they sort that issue out because that's not a happy place to be if the car's not doing well. Up next is number 50 is Nick Halstead. Nick Halstead came back at Brands Hatch, Mr. Crazy Kart himself. Obviously, teammate to Mikey Doble. As I say, going back to the comments we raised about Nick Hamilton being on the grid, Nick Halstead is not on there just to be giving a lot of things. To be fair, going back to Aaron, he has shown better pace, but reliability issues and contact hasn't helped, has it? With a lot of things um, within the with the car, and I think he finished every race last year, but he's had so many retirements. Exactly, it's a bit of a rough one at the moment for Aaron, but who knows? Anyway, just just replying to a message. But yeah, so going to Nick Halstead, I don't know what I can really rate him. He's only been a handful of races. I think personally, I think going to what we said about Nick Hamilton has his own right to be on the grid, and so does Nick Halstead. I can't really. Yeah, it's not been great for him. He's had really a torrid time um, coming back into the BTCC, and obviously he had that rib injury at that weird rib injury that wasn't caused by an accident or anything that ruled him out of the Thruxton weekend, and I'm going to be honest, I'm still a bit concerned to see, is he really mentally and physically recovered from that? Because it just seems that it's a bit of a rough and tumble, um, you know, races for Nick. He obviously raced with Accelerate for a couple of years. I think this is the thing, Defon. This is what I can't really rate because his ill health this year's really messed him up. Um, and it's is that really pushing on to say you know this is you know it's put you know we'll take Robo for example. With Dan knowing he was going to have open heart surgery last year, you've got to prepare you mentally and physically. You've got to prepare mentally and physically for the outcomes and what to expect and what not to expect. But going with Nick Halstead, you know that injury or the issue um, with his illness ruled him out of Thruxton. You know, it seemed to be a bit touch and go for him to to be thereabouts. But I can't really rate him, unfortunately. I know it seems a bit harsh, but I can't really rate him because what is what's to come. So who knows? Let's see what second half brings for him, but there's not really a rating there. So we're getting towards now the latter half of the grid. But yes, we'll go for number 52, and that is Gordon Shedden. So I think there's a lot of but yeah, there's a lot of things. Um, you know, there's a lot of. I'm not gonna lie. I'm just gonna go through your comments, guys. But you know, like Tracy's just said, she's not wanting to hate on this. There's no hate about your comment, but he's just keeping the TV open for PMR. This is a thing. It's there's no hate with that. You know, PMR we're gonna run one car for Mikey Noble, and then someone was gonna take the second seat. But to be fair, he is a great driver, and you know he's had a couple of podiums in the GTs in the McLarens this year. But you know it's a bit weird to see a lot of things. And like Diffan said, it was interesting what he said during one episode of Tin Top Tuesday that tried to get another manufacturer to the grid. This is the thing. If we got another manufacturer to the grid, I'm sure Nick would be the pioneer. But anyway, but yeah, it is what it is. But anyway, let's go on about Gordon Shedden then, number 52. Um, what do we think about Gordon? And evening, Lee. How you doing, mate? But yeah, Gordon Shedden this year coming back into the BTCC was not expecting him. I was not expecting him to join Speedworks, nor was I expecting him to come back into British Touring Cars. Have I been proven wrong with this? I'm going to be honest, getting a race win at Alton Park last time out was purely because of the reverse grid. And the results previously weren't there. Um, it's going back to the speed of the Corolla and the issues with the Corolla. It's hampering that team. It seems one driver seems to be doing all right. The others seem to struggle. But for me, I can't give Gordon a solid rating. What do I rate him? What do I rate him? Let me know, guys, in the comments. Let me know in the comments. But yeah, but it just seems a lot of hard work has gone into for Gordon to come back. However, I'm slightly worried to see why he's come back. He's not gonna get his fourth title unless something magically happens. Unless the others all in front of him get excluded after race. But he's not gonna get his fourth title. I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna give him probably a 3. I know it seems mean, but it's a 3. But anyway, I need to get through these drivers. We'll kill two burn. Yeah, he's not had he's not had a season he's been hoping for, has he, so far? But it is what it is, isn't it? But yeah, right, retired from a couple of races, also been wiped out by other drivers, you wouldn't expect him to be only win one race in 15 races. It's unbelievable seeing as a three-time champion. Yeah, so right, so yeah, and he's been pushed up by Max Hall twice, which hasn't helped, has it? Right, we're going to kill two birds in one stone. We're going to do two drivers in one in one stone. So we're going to go Josh Cook and Sam Osborne. We'll try and do them two each, so we can speed up this live video because I need to finish dead on half past because I need to get something to eat. So Josh Cook, then, one motorsport pioneer, as we know, back in the Honda. Arguably, I'm going to be honest, Josh has had a bit of a weird season in the Honda so far. A huge qualifying shunt at Thruxton in the wet, which then ended up him going to hospital for precautionary checks a with a sore foot or a sore ankle. I think personally that hampered him. Yes, he's been on the podium, but it just seems there is a lot to take in, and I can't, for some reason, I can't picture why or what's going on. There's been no race wins from the King of Thruxton so far. I think personally, I'm going to give him maybe a 3. We'll probably change these at some point. But you know, he's not done really well so far to be where he wants to be with that Honda. He enjoys the Honda because it's a car he likes, but personally, it's not been the easiest. But you know, I'd say a 3 anyway. But then obviously going on to, you know, Sam Osborne, obviously the third of the Napa Racing UK cars. For me, Sam seems to improve race by race, but then so far it's not been great. He got taken out by Stephen Jelly at Alton Park in race 1, which, yeah, that's the thing, Lee. He's on fire. He knows what he's doing. Josh knows what he's doing, but the only problem is if he keeps out of trouble, he gets a good run. But when he's in trouble, it seems to be a bit. But then again, that's that's my opinion. But we're all entitled to our opinions. So yeah, Sam Osborne, I think he manages to get into sort of a rhythm in qualifying, but then come the races, it seems to be a bit of a weird one for him. I don't know really how to rate some season at the moment, but the other guys in Napa, the likes of Ash, Robo, and Camo, need to really help him again. But you never know. Some might do well second half of the season. He seemed to do all right second half of the season last year. So you know, it is what it is, isn't it? But let's see what he can do. I'm not too sure what I'm going to rate him, but the rating will come to me at some point. But anyway, we'll carry on. We'll do 3 drivers in one go. That is Tom Ingram, Mikey Noble, and Max Hall. Tom Ingram, obviously pioneer of Team Virtue, obviously second in the championship with 2 race wins at. I tell you what, it would be interesting. Yeah, Sam's probably there's probably a lot of things. There's a lot of potential that you never know. We may see Jamie Osborne in a BTCC car at some point. You never know, do you, boys and girls? You never know. But as I was saying, you never know. Jamie Osborne may jump in a Focus. You could actually disguise that as well. Yeah, this is the thing. Josh hasn't won a race since Thruxton 2022. No, this is the thing. It doesn't. To go to Diffan's point, one motorsport missed last season, so it's not really helped. Sam was showing glimpses of pace, but being taken out at Thruxton and Alton Park have hurt some of his results. Yep, exactly. It's not been great, has it? But yeah, Tom is flying this season, Tracy. He just needs more wins. Personally, I think he's the closest guy at the moment to take Ash Sutton to the title. But yeah, who knows? I can't really. If I don't rate these drivers now, it's because we're running out of time. But I will give you my thoughts and opinions about them. But yeah, Tom's doing quite well to fight. He's got 2 race wins at the moment, but who knows what's going to happen coming second half of the season. And obviously, with the high and die potentially getting looked at and getting some sort of reduction, who knows? But yeah, Tom's doing okay, I suppose. Not gonna lie, but then again, I'm a Napa fan, so I can't really justify. Well, I can, but you know. But then obviously Mikey Doble this season maiden win at Snetterton. Obviously, currently um, really pioneering the Power Max racing. Yeah, Tom is the closest rival to Ash, considering he's only won 2 races. Ash's 4 races is a good going, showing that he's collecting the points. Well, he's making pointsy, isn't he? He's been pointsy along the way, which is good for Tingram. But yeah, Mikey Doble, winner at race 3 at Snetterton. Personally, long overdue after getting pipped to the race win by Jake Hill at Alton Park last year. Personally, we didn't think Power Max would be on the grid this year due to sponsor issues, but for Mikey to show that the at Vauxhall Astra, yes, people are going to say it's the old car, it's an aging car. Why is it on the grid? Well, it is on the grid. It deserves to be there. But Mikey has done so well so far in that car to show exactly the true colours, to tell you exactly why he deserves to be on the BTCC grid, and who knows exactly what's to come in the second half of the season. For Mikey, I think personally, he's a great guy. He came on here 2 years ago, and you know, to see what he's doing with that Astra is incredible. It's a car. Yeah, he's he 10 out of 10 for certain. You know, it is to get that race win at Snetterton does seem to be the icing on the cake. Up next is 93 is Max Hall. I'm going to be honest. I don't really want to be negative, but unfortunately, I'm going to have to be. He's been caught up in so many incidences. I don't understand what's gone on between him and his teammate Dexter Unlimited. It seems Maxi seems to be pushing on quite excuse me, but Max seems to be pushing and having a bit of a issue with being pushing too hard and making silly mistakes. Mikey started off the season so well. I was so happy to see him get his first win at Snetterton, but unfortunately reliability at Thruxton and not a very good Alton Park has been his downside for the first half of the season. Yeah, that's exactly what's been unfortunately happening in Diffon, but you never know. Did I get a mention? I need to watch that. I didn't. I'll have to rewatch it and see if I you know, what did he actually say in it, mate? That'll be interesting. I need to watch it on his Insta. But yeah, um, but um, but yeah, So he's doing all right, is Mikey. But Max Hall, I think he's learning a bit of the school of hard knocks of the BTCC too much at the moment. It's no disrespect to him, but I think he needs to really, if he wants to make contention. That's a great thing. Well, the thing is, let's not start a riot in here. But it is what it is, though, guys. In it, but he's had a few great ding dongs with Flash a couple of times. Yes, takes Netterton for example. I didn't see it because I was at the bomb hole, but he took out Gordon, took out Dexter Pattinson at Bronze Hatch, and they nearly had a bit of a fistcuff. I think personally, he's learning the BTCC. Well, that's the thing. He needs to watch himself because he's collecting so many points on his race license. will get him a race ban. I think it's ironic he's got more points on his race license than he has points. Well, that's the thing. I think personally, like I say, I think the BTCC is a huge. Oh, sick! I'll have to watch that. That's nice. I'll have to rewatch that, mate. I'll rewatch that when I wind down after this. Nice, nice. Like that. It's nice that he's mentioned the vlog page. Bless him. Bless Mikey. I'll have to invite him. I'll have to re-invite him. He was a top guest as well. That video is now on YouTube. Unfortunately, our videos are now having to go onto YouTube, but we'll talk about that another day. But yeah, Max Hall, can't really rate him at the moment. I'm sorry to really burst everyone's bubble, but I'll give him a rating at something. I think he's going to be a Dan Zelos coming in. I had a lovely black foot after seeing the maps at Crazy Carts. Oh dear. What happened there, Tracy? Do message me. I'm interested to figure it out. But yeah, I think Max Hall is too much for his own stuff at the moment. But then again, that's my opinion. Can't go too far with that. Charles Rainford, Ash Sutton, Dan Lloyd, and James Dorlin. We'll just briefly go on about Charles Rainford. First race win at Brands Hatch in race 3. Got a podium early on in the day. Fair play to him. I think he's doing well in the BMW at the moment. He's probably the better one out of all 4 of them, to be fair. But fair play to him. Max had a ding dong at every round. Someone needs to remind him it's BTCC, not JCWs. True. But yeah, Charles Rainford doing well at WSR and the BMW at the moment. But as I say, we've got to get through these because I've got to get something to eat, and of course I've got to be up early tomorrow because I've got a hospital appointment. Ash Sutton, where do I start? On his way to get his 5th title. That's all I'm going to say. But as I say, I'll give you guys the proper ratings about the others that I've mentioned. But Ash Sutton definitely on his way to title number 5, regardless. Crashed his crazy car into the barrier and hit you. Oh dear, that does not sound good. I think he got enough racecraft he could do better, but not BMW there for him. Yeah, I suppose it is what it is. If BMW could sort out the issues, then Charles could get another race win. Ash Sutton, like I say, on his way to get his 5th title, regardless, we think. Dan Lloyd, baptism of fire to come back, but it's a car he knows very well. But unfortunately, Alton Park was a complete disaster. Getting kits out of qualifying due to ride height issues, which was some bizarre within that. But and then of course that crash. Sutton is best on track, yeah, exactly. Sutton is just an alien. And to the BTCC, Dan Lloyd, unlucky at Alton Park. Hopefully, second half of the season goes better for him. But as I say, that is that. But then James Dorlin, oops, as I somehow look at the event logs for some bizarre reason. Yeah, there's a great engineer in Antonio Caruso at Napa. And then, of course, James Dorlin, rounding up the live video. I think personally he's okay, but needs to improve better, I think, personally. But there you go, guys. I'll give you my ratings about the guys that I've mentioned at some point. As long as Ash doesn't back off, I think other drivers should get a penalty for that. Robo won't get a penalty though. Ash has had an excellent season so far. I think he's only scored points in every round so far. Exactly. Yeah, that race, that launch at Fruxton was unreal. But yes, that concludes tonight's live video. I'm going to be live tomorrow. Probably do a bit of a British Grand Prix preview if I get round to it. I've missed one. Who have I missed, Tracy? Who have I missed? Is it Michael Crees? Yeah, I've missed Michael Crees, haven't I? Michael Crees, let's give him a shout out for taking part in the first half of the season. You know, let's give him his baptism of fire at Donington and Brands Hatch. You know, and let's hope he's back in the second half of the season. But yeah, Michael Crees, let's hope he's back. Um, but yeah, as I say, Finn Leslie and of course Ryan Bensley won't get rated because they were only one-off appearances. James has shown pace at Fruxton and Alton. Maybe he could score a race win or even a win by the end of the season. Yeah, never know, mate. You never know. He has got some good pace. Sutton, Tingram, and Robo top three this season. You never know. I'd love to see Robo actually finish second and defeat Tom Ingram, but I don't think that'll ever happen. Right, guys. On that note, I've got to go. But thank you for tuning in. Mate, yeah, making a big boo boo for a change of driver at the wrong time. It is what it is. But let's see if Creasy does get the budget to come back for the second half of the season. Who knows? Fingers crossed. But yes, I will see you guys tomorrow at 9 p.m. British summertime. Until then, guys, have a fabulous night. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being here. And I'll catch up with you guys very soon. Take care. Have a good night. Ta-ra.